Today, we're discussing one of the most important and often misunderstood areas of preparedness and prevention. Many acts of violence are preceded by concerning behaviors, warning signs, or some other observable changes that often go unnoticed or unaddressed. My guest today is Mr. David Shanks, who works with the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency. And he is helping expand behavioral threat management concepts into the houses of worship community. Today, we'll discuss how churches can recognize concerns, create a culture of awareness, and strengthen prevention efforts while remaining welcoming, compassionate, and mission-focused. Join me in welcoming Mr. David Shanks to the podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I appreciate this opportunity.
Oh, man, it's great to have you. You ready to dive right in, sir? I'm excited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go.
All right. Open a segment. Let's start right at Genesis. What is behavioral threat management, sir? So we're going to start there. Dave, many church leaders may not be familiar with the term behavior threat management. What is it and why is it important to us?
So behavioral, and I'm going to expand just a little bit on that. Behavioral threat assessment and management, or BTAM, as we kind of call it over here, is it's a proactive way, systematic approach to trying to prevent acts of targeted violence. We want to identify a person or a situation that is exhibiting some concerning behaviors, or maybe going through a rough time. Okay. And we want to assess that situation using a multidisciplinary team. And then we want to come up with a way to help that person. This is a way for us to try to stay left of bang, try to intervene before this person ever gets to the end of their rope where they feel like targeted violence is the only way that I can address my situation. We want to try to intervene before that and pull them off the pathway to violence. It focuses on understanding that pathway. There is a discernible pathway that people usually go down, where it starts with, like you mentioned, those identifying those behaviors that just don't seem right. And as they escalate, there is, they start to increase, they start to add to those behaviors, and people notice it. So trying to identify that person, work with them, try to see what is going on with their situation, and then try to put something in place to manage that situation. Try to help them realize that, violence is not the only means to addressing a grievance.
Okay. Well, so Dave, break it down for me in simple terms, please.
Yes.
How is this different from traditional security?
Well, and I spent many years. I worked years and years ago with a company called Compaq Computer. It's no longer there, but I worked in loss prevention, and so we did physical security. We had the cameras, we had the locks, we had the teams, we had all the fancy gadgets that were available at the time, which that has definitely increased, to help and try to keep people safe, to try to protect. And try to intervene and try to prevent acts of crime from happening at the time. And so behavioral threat assessment and management actually it works hand in hand with physical security, because we need the physical security, but we also need to intervene when an act has not been committed yet, where they haven't made a threat, they haven't come into the house of worship and acted crazy or worse.
Right.
And so what behavioral threat assessment is, it's trying to identify those beforehand. So it's important to take a more proactive approach. There are several parts of the traditional security that are proactive. This is focusing on the behavior of a person.
Okay. And you've stated this, but it bears repeating. So I'm going to ask you to reiterate. Why is it becoming more important today?
Because our acts of targeted violence, while we've had them going on for hundreds of years, they're becoming more and more prevalent. They're becoming more and more visible. And so when people are going down this pathway, they are starting to exhibit these signs. So it's important for us to get involved with all the aspects of our community, especially our houses of worship, because those behaviors can be identified. And if someone's willing to step up and say, hey, something's not going right, we can intervene. We can prevent these acts of targeted violence from happening. I went to a conference a few years ago where they had one of the gentlemen that intervened in the church shooting out in Texas. And he spoke, and he was talking about some of the signs, some of the things that could have been they were detectable. They were detectable. People don't just snap in these instances. There are things that they exhibit, things they say, behaviors that they go through that other people notice. The problem is they don't say anything until afterwards. Then they're the ones that stand up in front. Yeah, they're stand up and you know what? I heard this, or I saw this, or he sent me this, and we've got to change that. And churches are a prime place to start.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that the essence of behavioral threat management is prevention and not prediction?
Correct. We cannot predict when these acts will occur. There are several agencies there that have tried, and they're very, very limited success. We cannot predict, but we can prevent. If we can identify it, if we can notice it, we can prevent it.
Okay, so now this is a good segue right into the next segment, Dave. Okay, we're talking about recognizing concerning behaviors. So what kind of behaviors should church leaders and ministry teams pay attention to?
So I hate to say this, but there's not a checklist. There are a lot of behaviors that are exhibited constantly from time to time. There's things like proximal warning behaviors, where we talk about things like identification, pathway warning behaviors. But every piece of information needs to be taken with context and with totality of the circumstances. For example, a person who comes into a church and starts to kind of just hang out in the corner. They're withdrawn. They're kind of isolating themselves. That could be, if we look and there's more information to collect, that could be concerning. Or it could be the person has just had a rough week. So we have to take the context. We've got to take the totality of the circumstances into account. So, but there are behaviors that do bear in mind that say, you know what, we need to dig a little bit deeper. Things like isolation. Behavior changes. We have a person who comes into the church that is well known and they are normally very outgoing. Well, they come in and they're not outgoing. Let's dig around and collect some of those dots and find out why. It could just be they had a bad day, or it could be they've had some stressors in their life. You know, things are happening that say, you know what, I'm starting to give up. And so now that's the time when we can say, okay, something is going on with this person. Let's find out what they need. Let's see what we can put in place to pull them off this pathway. So there are so many things, isolation, mental health struggles, that are really becoming more and more prevalent. And we have a way now, if we work to it, if we work together, we have a way to be able to intervene.
Okay. All right. And that's, I just want to piggyback on what you're saying, Dave, because you're giving us some good stuff here. And just because, I mean, a behavior may be concerning doesn't necessarily mean it's dangerous, but it should prompt awareness. Like you said, just dig a little deeper. You know,
dig a little deeper.
I understand.
One of my mentors in this field, when he came and gave us some training, he gave a quote, which was not his quote, but it is about dot collecting. We cannot connect the dots if we don't collect the dots. And so why that is important is for example, I work a lot with the K through 12 schools, and we talk about social media posts. A person posts a picture with a gun. Well, by itself, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It could be the opening day of deer season. It could be, they just got a new weapon. They want to show it off. Or if we dig down and find something else, hey, they're going through a financial loss. They're, families breaking up, a lot of stresses that are happening, and they've started taking an interest in violence as a means to addressing their grievances. Now that's concerning.
Absolutely.
Again, we have to take that context. We got to take that totality to make this effective.
Okay. All right. So, Dave, I want to ask you about creating a culture of awareness, right?
Yes, sir.
How can churches, and this is something that is kind of specific to churches, far as the fear of of creating a culture of fear or suspicion. So how can they build awareness without doing that?
Well, you said it right there. Awareness.
Mhm.
Awareness. We don't want to build that culture of fear. We don't want to build that suspicion that,
Right.
oh, every time I go into church, everyone's looking at me. They're trying to see
Right.
what I'm doing wrong. That's not what we're here about. We're here to help people.
That's
Every
right.
one of us goes through a rough time in our lives.
True.
Most of us have support mechanisms there that my wife upset me. You know what? I still love her. There are some
Right.
though that say, you know what? This is all I've got left. And so we've got to create that culture. And a lot of it's just awareness, having somebody from the church that say, you know what, Mr. Smith, is something going on? Something just seems off. Having
Mhm.
those people that establish those relationships that say, you know what, we're here to help, and building that culture, it comes with letting people know and trust that we're here to help them. We're not here to kick you out of church. We're not here to
Right.
put you in handcuffs. We're not here to do that. We are here to help. I've been involved in churches for all my life. I was raised in the church, and it's interesting when you go to some churches, and there's not many of them, but every now and then you just get the feeling that, you know what, I'm not welcome here.
Right.
That's how we can work to overcome that, is create that welcoming environment that, hey, guess what? We're aware. We're aware that, things have changed in your life. And, it's up to me to say, you know what, something's not going right. Let me talk to you about it as
Right.
a fellow human being, and say, you know what, hey, is there anything we can do to help? We know things, we think things aren't going right now. What can we do to help you out? And if we can encourage churches, houses of worship to foster those type of beliefs, we can
Mhm.
overcome that, and we can help prevent targeted violence.
That's right. So now I'm going to ask a direct question. What role do pastors play in this happening?
They are the leaders of the flock. They
you
are
go.
the ones. First of all, they have to be the ones to help create that atmosphere.
Right.
You can have every church member that believes that, hey, we want to help people, but if the pastor isn't willing to convey that as well, people are not. They're not going to get involved. They have
Right.
got to be the ones to convey that. They have also got to be the ones to help let people know, awareness. Let people that come to the church know, hey, listen, we have resources. I know several pastors that are
Mhm.
wonderful counselors.
Right.
And I'll be honest, if I've never been to a church before, but I need some help and I go in there, I may not know that the counselor, that the pastor is available. So the pastor needs to let the congregation, let those people that are visiting know that, letting them know, hey, listen, we've got a team that, they're here to help. If they come up to you, they're not wanting to kick you out. They're wanting to see what they can do to help you.
Right.
So the
right.
pastor can being that leader of letting them know that, hey, listen, the awareness, this is what we have in place. They can be that catalyst.
Okay. Now, and that was well said. But how do the pastors and the leaders avoid overreaction?
That's tough. That is tough.
Mhm.
That is a really good question. And a lot of that's going to come down to relationships. I've had friends before that I've worked with, and I've been involved in public safety for over 35 years. I've had friends that I've worked with, and in fact, I'm going back to one of my former sergeants with the police department that I worked in. I loved him, great guy, but he was one, if he would we'll put it nicely, he would overreact.
Okay.
And people,
All right.
he would overreact to a lot of situations. And so when we would go to calls for service, people knew him, and they would go toward me. So
Okay.
pastors, in overreacting, first of all, let's not just take one piece of information. If
Mhm.
a person is going through, it's like going back to that picture of a person holding a gun. Is it concerning? Well, I don't know. Let's collect some more dots. So
Right,
getting
right.
more information, don't react until you have more information. Find out what you can about a situation, what you can about a person, and then using a multidisciplinary team, not just one viewpoint, but multiple viewpoints, going through and say, okay, listen, what type of a situation do we have there? Because if we can do that, that will help kind of quench that overreactions.
Okay. Okay. That's very well explained. So I want to pivot a little bit now, Dave,
Yes,
and
sir.
talk about application. Okay.
Yes, sir.
How do behavior threat management concepts apply specifically to houses of worship?
So churches, houses of worship, they are in a prime position because people visit them. That is usually every community that I've been a part of. That is a pivotal part of the community. People come to churches when they need help, whether
right.
it's spiritual help, whether it's
Right.
financial help, whether it's
Absolutely.
marriage help. They come to churches because that's supposed to be a helping beacon in the community. So
Right.
churches are in a prime area, prime location to be able to say, you know what? Something is going wrong with this person. Let's find out. Let's have a multidisciplinary team. Oh, guess what? Our community has some resources. Let's point those resources into this person's life so that we can hopefully pull them off that pathway. Churches are in a prime location to be able to do that. When there's a couple classes that I teach around our state on behavioral threat assessment and management, and one of the keys to behavioral threat assessment to being successful is a multidisciplinary team.
Right.
There are people in our community that we call them key gatekeepers or subject matter experts. And they are people that can be called in to provide some context, to provide some history, to provide some more information about what is going on in a person's life. And that's a pivotal role that churches can play. When I teach this class, I encourage every team that's forming up. I said, you need to have a relationship with your local pastors and with your local churches, because that is a prime area to get information, find out what is going on in the situation. It's also a prime place to be able for a management strategy. Churches provide so many management strategies that can be helpful in behavioral threat assessment. Why not have those relationships built right now? When I first came on board with the state, they told us, they said, I don't want to wait till the tornadoes are twisting for me to go and meet somebody. I want to go and establish those relationships and buy a cup of coffee with them and know that when the stuff happens, the bad stuff happens, I know, I know somebody I can call. So that's where churches can be very, very important in building those relationships in the community to be able to provide those management strategies as well.
Now, Dave, I'm going to ask you a question that's a main challenge for a church. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Now, and I need you to give me the synopsized answer to this. Okay?
Okay.
So now,
yes, sir.
How can churches balance hospitality and awareness?
They have to hold hands. It's okay, especially with people that are going to be like greeters, security people in church. Awareness, they need to, if they see someone who they don't recognize or someone who they do know, but they seem to be off a little bit, they need to approach them. They need to go and I don't want to say confront because that's a bad word. They need to go and talk to that person and let them know, because a lot of times engage. I love that. Engage. They need to go engage with that person, because that does two things. One, it shows the person that if you have bad intentions, I've got my eyes on you.
Yes.
Right?
You're being watched.
I'm going to be watching you. But it also shows, somebody really cares about me. I've got things going on, and it's obviously affecting my face or affecting my demeanor and my behavior. Somebody cares about me. So that may give someone the opportunity to say, this guy cares, or this lady cares about me. Let me open up to them a little bit and let them know what's going on. So they have to go together. The awareness has to go in with that other aspect.
Right. So there's the prevention has to go along with connections. There has to be a connection.
Yes, sir.
Involved. Okay. So
yes, sir.
Now, Dave, we're going to make this practical now. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part of every episode. Let's make it practical and make it real.
I love tabletop exercises. I love it.
Yes. So now, and I got a scenario coming for you too, but now we're just going to deal with a practical question.
Yes, sir.
And pastors are listening to these episodes, okay? A pastor listening right now, they want to improve prevention efforts. Where do you suggest they begin? Is it training? Is it communication? Is it reporting procedures? What's your recommendation? You're the SME.
Yes. All three of those.
I need more.
Where I would start. where I would start, first of all, relationships, building those relationships, finding people in your church, in your community that could help out. It is important that if the community has a team, the church either tries to become a part of that team or at least establish a relationship with that team. Training. There are so many avenues for training out there. The Department of Homeland Security has a program called INTER, National Threat Evaluation and Reporting. And there are INTER master trainers all over the United States. They can reach out to probably their local, I say their local, their state Department of Public Safety or Investigation Bureau. They probably have some trainers there. Training, awareness training is going to be very important, especially at the beginning, not just for the pastor, not just for the team members, but also for the church, letting them know that, there are certain behaviors that might indicate that we want to take a little bit better look. So training is really important. Reporting mechanisms are very important. One of the barriers to people coming forward is they don't know a way to report. And let's be quite honest. Not everyone is going to call 911. Not everyone is going to contact the pastor. There need to be avenues of reporting. So establishing those avenues of reporting, there are some free mechanisms that are available in the United States. Most states have some sort of suspicious activity reporting. I encourage houses of worship to come up with maybe an email that somebody can send something to, or a phone call that, that somebody can do, because getting that information to come in, you have a public safety background, the phrase garbage in, garbage out. Absolutely. If we don't get information to come in, we're not going to be able to intervene and do something about it. So those reporting mechanisms need to be promoted in the church. The pastor getting up in front of the service and saying, hey, listen, guys, we have we've got some hotlines that we can use. Here's what they are. If you're going through a hot time, or a hard time, here's an email that you can go, or you can call my cell phone, or however but they need to encourage those reporting mechanisms because that's going to be one of the biggest ways to get that information in. So training is huge. The INTER program is a wonderful program. It's a lot of good information that teams can take and kind of help formulate, but also that awareness, that those reporting mechanisms that needs to get out there.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you for a little more specificity, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Give me and the viewers 3 actions a church could take in the next 30 days. 3 actions. The
next 30 days. The first thing they can do is they can select people who play certain roles and make them a part of a team. And this could be, if you have, maybe a public safety person, and if you've got, maybe an assistant pastor, if you've got a counselor or a mental health professional, somebody that can be in a case, say, this is a team, we're going to get together. And if we get a report or a something that comes into us, this multidisciplinary team with different disciplines, they're going to sit down and take a look at it. Okay. They're going to collect any information we can get, and they're going to, all of them together are going to sit down and take a look at the situation. The other thing that they can do is they can find out what reporting mechanisms are available in their community. Whether it's statewide, whether it's nationwide, whether it's local, finding out those reporting mechanisms. And that's probably going to be reaching out to your local public safety. Okay. Your EMA director, your sheriff, your chief, your fire chief, finding those and promoting those to the congregation. Those are the 2 biggest steps you can take right off the bat. Then I would encourage them to reach out to a master trainer or to someone who has experience with behavioral threat assessment and management. Get that training set up. Usually, most of the training programs that I've been a part of, they go anywhere from like an hour to 3 days. They need to go through that training because they need to know, they need to know what they're looking at, and then they also need to know kind of when to pump the brakes, because we don't want to overreact. We definitely don't want to do that. No, but we also don't want to underreact. We want to identify that, we've got a person going through some problems. The other thing they can do, this is a 4th step I would take. Find out what resources, first of all, the church provides, and then also what resources are provided in the community. Because if they identify a person of concern that has some specific needs, if they don't know what the community provides, how are they going to be able to point them in that direction? So those are the steps that I would take in the next few days. Go ahead and start there, and then work on that training, and then build from there.
I love it. I love it. And thank you for the bonus step too, Dave. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. And now,
no charge.
as I promised you, Dave, we're going to do a scenario, okay? So I'm just going to give you a scenario and then give you just a couple of follow-up questions, okay?
Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. So here's a scenario. A church volunteer notices a member exhibiting increasingly concerning behavior over several months. The person has become isolated, appears angry, and has made several troubling comments, but has not made a direct threat. So the first question, what should happen next?
They should tell somebody, because this is a prime example of getting behavioral threat assessment before they make a threat. The first thing they should do is use one of those reporting mechanisms, whatever they have, whether it's a hotline, whether it's a phone call, an email. They need to let somebody know. The biggest challenge to effective threat assessment and management is getting people to come forward. So the first thing they need to do is let somebody who can do something about it know.
Okay. And the next follow-up question, what mistakes should leaders avoid in a situation like this?
Overreacting is one. Taking all the information and looking at it with only one person. We really focus on that multidisciplinary team, because an event to me may mean something else to somebody who has different life experiences and has different training. So we want to have at least, at minimum of 2 people, different disciplines, look at all of that information, try to determine, okay, what do we not know about this situation, and where can we legally and ethically go to get that information? And then reaching out to gather that information, collect all those dots so that we can, as a multidisciplinary team, connect those dots.
All right, Dave, thank you for that. Thank you for that. That makes perfect sense. So now, Dave, you are going to be the inaugural guest that's going to answer what I'm starting now, the Faith Secure leadership question. Okay. So here we go. Now, one of Faith Secure's core messages is being watchful, prayerful, and prepared. That is our mantra. Sir. So now, how do those concepts align with the goals of behavioral threat management and prevention?
Being watchful, being aware, practicing situational awareness, being willing to step up and say, you know what, something doesn't seem right. I'm going to go find out more, or I'm going to get somebody else who can go find out more. Being watchful, being situationally aware, not you see a person who may be exhibiting some concerning behaviors and not just kind of, he may just be, Dave's just being a typical old man. Be willing to go and dig down a little bit deeper and find out what's going on. I love, in my class, I love to talk about behavioral threat assessment is all for nosy people. People who are willing to say, you know what, I'm going to go find out what's going on. I'm going to find out why that person is acting like that. So that's being the watchful part. Being watchful, being aware of what's going on around you. Developing relationships with people so that if their behavior changes, there's probably a reason for that. Let's go find out why. Being prayerful. Prayer needs to start in everything we do, because I have as I've gotten a little bit older, and I know I look like I'm about 25 years old, but I'm actually a little bit older than that.
I didn't think a day over 22. Go ahead.
A day over 22. I appreciate that, sir. Your check is in the mail. I have realized the older that I've gotten how much more prayer needs to take a focus in my life. Yes. If I'm going in, and that can help with the overreaction too. A pastor or somebody realizes, hey, something's not right. Rather than let me just react right quick. Let's take just a moment and say a quick prayer. Okay, God, help me. Let me focus on this. Let me find it, and let me be able to help this person. That's even more important than being watchful. Is that prayerful portion of that?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So, Dave, thank you for breaking that down. I appreciate it. And you did
My
very
pleasure,
good
sir.
on the inaugural Faith Secure question. So Dave,
Did I
here's the
get an
last
A?
one. Yes, you get an A and a star.
Yes,
So
sir.
Dave,
Thank you.
I'm just gonna have this is the closing question, and I'm gonna get ready to get you out of here, okay?
Okay.
And I
Yes, sir.
always like to end with some encouragement for the church leaders and pastors that are watching this stream.
Mhm.
What encouragement would you give pastors and church leaders who want to strengthen prevention efforts but have no idea where to begin? What encouragement would you give them?
Baby steps. Baby
Yeah.
steps. Do it. Do it. Reach out. Communicate. I would almost guarantee that there are people in your congregation, people in your community who are waiting for you to say, hey, you know what? We want to start being proactive. We want to start, getting people together. We want to start, this team. Reach out. Start with
Right.
your public safety. I promise you, there are people. When we first started a church that I went to, we started up a security team. And it was a smaller church. And for the longest time, there were several of us that just sat around and we're sitting there talking to each other. Like, man, we really need this. We really need this. It finally took the pastor getting up there and saying, you know what, guys, I know y'all been talking about this for a while, but let's go ahead and do it. I'll provide the backing. I'll provide what I need to help support you guys. Just take that initial step. Just let people know. Sometimes all people know is just, you have my approval to do it. So
yeah, you're right. Absolutely
yes,
right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes. I love it. Now, I'm going to do a final takeaway. Just hang out with me for a second, Dave. I just want to leave the viewers with this. Behavioral threat management is not about living in fear. And I hope that message is not what we conveyed here today. It's about paying attention, caring for people, recognizing concerns, and then creating opportunities for intervention before a crisis occurs. So preparedness begins with awareness. And I think, Dave, you've done an excellent job of hammering home that point. So I want to thank Mr. David Shanks for joining us on the podcast. You did an outstanding job today, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I really appreciate this opportunity. I told you before, my wife told me I finally learned what I want to do when I grow up. And, I really believe, I really believe that if we're willing to work together, communicate, collaborate, coordinate, we can prevent targeted violence. And I believe, in our houses of worship, in our communities, in our schools, we can prevent it. But we've got to be willing to take that first step. So thank you for this opportunity.
No problem, sir. Thank you for being on. And I want to thank you, the viewers. If you found the information on this podcast to be useful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can also connect with us at mdbconsultingagency.com/Faith Secure. Until the next episode, remember as always to be watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.